In Bolivia, relatives of the victims of the Senkata and Sacaba massacres are mobilized on Tuesday to demand justice. Amid protests by peasant and indigenous organizations in Ecuador, President Lasso proclaimed a state of emergency for 60 days under the pretext of fighting delinquency. Thousands of protesters have staged a sit-in calling on the military to dissolve Sudan's transitional government as the country struggles with the biggest crisis since the end of Omar al-Bashir's government 2 years ago. Hello, welcome to From the South. I am Gomez from the Lasso studios in Havana. We begin with the news. In Bolivia, relatives of the victims of Senkata and Sacaba massacres mobilized on Tuesday. Social organizations and human rights defenders joined in the 200-kilometer march from the city of Caracollo to La Paz to demand the conviction of former de facto President Janine Áñez and others responsible for the acts of violence in 2019. The demonstrators denounced delays in the justice process and demand the imprisonment of those responsible. They argued that the march will demand compliance with the recommendations of the interdisciplinary group of independent experts of the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, which in a recent report confirmed the massacres that left at least 38 dead and over 100 wounded, and finally proposed preparations for damages. Bolivia celebrated on Monday a year of recovery of democracy. On October 18, 2020, Luis Arce of the Movement Towards Socialism, MAS, triumphed in the presidential elections with 55% of the votes. With the victory of his MAS formula, Arce Choquehuanca, 11 months of Janine Áñez's de facto government came to an end. The anniversary was the occasion for celebrations and rallies in different parts of the country as a show of unity and strength in the face of threats from anti-democratic sectors. Celebrations took place after the Bolivian right wing, supported by the United States, carried out a wave of destabilizing speeches during the last months, and the current government revealed the position attempt of magnicide against Luis Arce to prevent him from taking office. In Nicaragua, the Supreme Electoral Council issued, with the approval of all political parties involved, the sole ballot for general elections on November 7th. This Monday was presented the sample of the official electoral ballot to representatives of the political parties participating in Nicaragua's 2021 general elections. The unique electoral ballot is characterized by two parts. The first one is for the election of president and vice president, with a photo of the candidate of a head of state, a flag and slogan of the corresponding party. Second one is the section for deputies, which is presented only with the flag and name of the candidates. Nicaragua faces a new electoral process in the midst of interfering comments from the government of the United States that continuously seeks to destabilize the Central American nation's peace. And amid protests by peasant and indigenous organizations in Ecuador, President Lasso proclaimed state of emergency for 60 days under the pretext of fighting delinquency. On Monday, Lasso announced a series of security measures, including arms control, 24-hour patrols, and drug searches, among other actions by the national police and the armed forces. During his statement, he affirmed that over 70% of the violent deaths in the province of Guayas, the epicenter of the protest, are related in some way to drug trafficking. Currently, Lasso is not going through his best moment. In addition to the Pandora Papers scandal, there is also the prison crisis that the government has been responsible for. His administration is appointed as accountable for the armed confrontations between gangs and the social demands voiced in mobilizations. Second day of the general strike and rejection of the insecurity in Haiti is underway. Various sectors of the Caribbean nation called for the continuation of the demonstration on Tuesday. Miu Cheng-ju, president of the Association of Owners and Drivers, warned businesses, schools, drivers, and other unions to keep their doors closed. The leader criticized the government for its repressive actions to control the protests and demanded a decrease in violence. Port-au-Prince and other cities experienced a general strike on Monday amidst the worsening insecurity that plagues the Haitian capital and its surroundings. The Bolivarian Alliance for People of Our America, ABA-TCP, issued a communique on Monday categorically rejecting the interference of imperialist powers in the electoral process of Nicaragua. The statement comes in response to recent declarations of the United States government officials as the attacks on Nicaragua intensify as it gears up for general elections in November. According to the ALBA bloc, in flagrant violation of the principles and purposes of the Charter of the United Nations, U.S. officials continue attacking the legitimate government of the sister Republic of Nicaragua, it says, promoting attempts at destabilization. ABA-TCP member states also call attention to and condemn the flagrant interference of the pro-imperialist Organization of American States in the country, noting this body has never defended the interests of the Latin American peoples. Likewise, they ratified support for President Daniel Ortega and the Nicaraguan people. We'll be right back after this very short break. Welcome back. The Cuban government announced that it will carry out a controlled and staggered reopening of the national borders as of November 15. The Minister of Tourism, Juan Carlos Garcia Granda, referred to the current epidemiological situation in Cuba, which shows a trend towards a decrease in the number of confirmed cases of COVID-19 in the last 15 days, as well as a trend towards the control of the pandemic. Facing this favorable scenario, the executive seeks to guarantee an increase in the number of flights and arrivals of international visitors. Garcia Granda specified that the obligatory quarantine of international travelers when arriving in the Caribbean country will be eliminated as of November 7. He also confirmed that by November 15, the border entry PCR will be eliminated and highlighted that the controlled opening of the border will be guaranteed because by then over 90% of the Cuban population will be vaccinated. We move forward. A national treasure off the northern Pacific coast of Chile is under threat by the Dominga mining project linked to Sebastián Piñera in the Pandora Papers investigation. The Humboldt archipelago is a refuge for a unique species of fauna, including a particular type of penguin and another on the brink, an otter, on the brink of extinction. However, its fragile ecosystem is under threat, according to environmentalists, due to the $2.5 billion mining project on the nearby mainland. Locals in Punta de Choros have survived off sustainable fishing in the area for generations. The Dominga mining project in the Coquimbo region is also at the center of a corruption scandal that could topple President Piñera, as the Pandora Papers revealed that he not only sold the company to a friend in the tax haven of the British Virgin Islands, but the deal included a clause that stated the final payment was dependent on not establishing an area of environmental protection in the area of the mining company's operation.
For us, the Dominga Mining Company is the destruction of our culture, our ancestral culture, the culture of the Shango people, the culture that has been already prevailed for more than 10,000 years in these territories, living in an integral and sustainable way with our environment. The issue is that this company wants to settle in a place that is a treasure of global importance from the point of view of biodiversity. Scientists around the world have recognized that there is no place like this on the planet, and that obviously means that there is a unique diversity that lives there. Many species that are threatened, some even in danger of extinction, but it is not only biodiversity, it also has to do with local productive activity. It seems to me that what is happening in Dominga is not just a scandal at the political level due to corruption, due to the illegalities that we have seen, and now due to the new antecedents that link the president. It is directly an attack against nature on this planet that is in crisis.
Representatives of 25 communities in Chiquimula, Guatemala have declared themselves in permanent resistance to illegal mining on communal lands by a company that responds to the interests of international corporations. We have more in the following report by our correspondent Santiago Boton.
Paintings are displayed in these highlands of the department of Chiquimula to make visible the resistance against the mining exploitation and communal lands carried out by the company Pato GTSA, whose message is not to mining, yes to life. Communities in resistance. Why we have adopted this position? Because we have seen that in different hours of the night and early morning, they have been extracting material in all illegal manner. According to the locals, illegal mining is taking place in the community of El Pato, located on the Tujarang hill in Chiquimula, the main source of water for the department. They were loading material. What kind of material? Well, we don't know, but they did transport many truckloads of material.
The spring that is here in Tahuran, where we have the water here for the community, has diminished too much because there's no longer enough water for all the houses.
The legal defense of these 25 affected communities claims that it was able to determine that the mining company is operating illegally. There is no authorization for exploitation. What they had was an authorization for exploration, nothing more. Mining at El Pato is part of several projects linked to Goldex resources and other international extractive industries as determined by the Observatory of Extractive Industries. There are Canadian interests on the southern side, Russian interests on that side, US interests to the north, and in several of these areas there are confirmed illegal operations. For example, here in the south, Canadian interests operate without licenses, without environmental impact studies. The resistance of rural communities in Chiquimula re-emerges in a context where Pope Francis called on extractive industries to respect life and stop their destructive actions.
Santiago Botón, Telesur Oriente de Guatemala.
Almost 20 million Brazilians have declared that they spend 24 hours or more without having anything to eat on any given day. Another 24.5 million are not sure if they would be able to eat on a daily basis and have already reduced the quantity and quality of what they eat. Another 75 million live unsure of whether they will go without food. According to a survey by Brazilian Research Network on Food and Nutritional Sovereignty and Security, more than half of Brazilians suffer from some type of food insecurity in December 2020. These numbers were registered before the inflationary spike in recent months, which has only aggravated the situation. We have more stories coming up after this final short break. But first, we invite you to watch a video on the International Day for Eradication of Poverty that was commemorated on last October 17. Welcome back. Thousands of protesters have staged a sit-in calling on the military to dissolve Sudan's transitional government as the country struggles with the biggest crisis since the end of Omar al-Bashir's government 2 years ago. Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok called the recent protests the worst and most dangerous crisis of the country's precarious transition. Sudan has undergone dramatic changes since the ouster of its former head of state, who is wanted by the International Criminal Court on charges of genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity in Darfur, where a conflict that began in 2003 killed over 300,000 people. At least 43 people were killed and 20 injured in an armed attack on a village market in the Nigerian state of Senkata in the northwest of the country. The attack took place when about 200 gang members broke into the market on motorcycles and opened fire indiscriminately. According to local authorities, 29 of the victims were security personnel and the remaining 11 were civilians. Residents believed that the attack was a reprisal to the happenings in Memon village, where the vigilantes killed 10 Fulani henchmen on the similar market day. However, the Ecuador state governor urged the people of the area not to take laws in their hands. The government and security agencies are making progress to bring the attackers to justice. Hundreds of political prisoners have been freed from Myanmar's insane prison jail for protesting the coup and ousted the civilian government in February. The announcement was made on state television by Army Chief Min Aung Hlaing, who granted amnesty in conjunction with the Trading Youth Festival on October 20th. The amnesty also followed an announcement by the Association of Southeast Asian Nations that the Army representative would not be invited to their summit later this month because the military had made insufficient progress in complying with the 5-point consensus that was agreed jointly in April. Under the plan, the military was supposed to end violence against those opposed to its coup and allow a special ASEAN envoy to visit the country and meet all parties.
My sister is charged with 505. She was arrested when someone reported her. She publishes books. Then, they ordered 50 books and arrested her with police vehicles and military trucks.
The European Commission's chief executive Ursula von der Leyen warned Poland on Tuesday that its challenge to the supremacy of the European Union law called into question the very foundations of the 27-nation bloc and could not go unpunished.
Act, and the options are all known. First option, infringements, where we legally challenge the judgment of the Polish Constitutional Court. Another option is the conditionality mechanism and other financial tools. The Polish government has to explain to us how it intends to protect European money given this ruling of their Constitutional Court.
The Brazilian Parliamentary Commission investigating the handling of the COVID-19 pandemic by the Jair Bolsonaro administration heard the testimonies of relatives of those killed by the virus in Brazil, days before the final report on the investigation is presented. The Senate on Sunday announced that the postponement from Tuesday to Wednesday of the report by the Committee of Inquiry into the alleged criminal acts by the Bolsonaro administration during the coronavirus pandemic. Senators said they wanted more time to debate the content of the 1,000-page report. Meanwhile, the vote on the report, which was initially scheduled for Wednesday, will take place next week on October 26th. On Friday, the committee rapporteur announced that at least 11 charges against Bolsonaro, including homicide by omission, genocide of indigenous peoples, and crimes against humanity. Analysts agree that the short-term impact of the final report will be symbolic because the Brazilian president still has enough support in Congress to avoid impeachment. The human rights group Rio de Paz paid a tribute to the over 600,000 people killed by COVID-19 in Brazil. Demonstrators placed 600 white handkerchiefs in front of the National Congress in the capital, Brasilia, each representing 1,000 deaths. The Senate Commission investigating the government's management of the pandemic has heard testimony of dreadful practices, including irregularities such as the government's delay in buying vaccines or the existence of a parallel cabinet of doctors and virologists used by President Bolsonaro to advocate drugs with no proven efficacy and even experiment on patients without their consent.
There are 600 white handkerchiefs that represent the pain of loss because 600,000 Brazilians had their lives interrupted by the pandemic. We are the second country in the world in absolute numbers of death and the seventh in the number of deaths per million people. Who's responsible for this tragedy? Where did we go wrong? There is no doubt that the federal government must be held accountable for its power because it minimized the lethal power of the virus. What do you expect from the Parliamentary Commission of Inquiry? Punishment for the guilty, there is no doubt about it. So that we will never again be treated by public authority as we have been treated in this pandemic. We will conclude that CPI and, God willing, it will not disappoint Brazil. It will show who is really responsible for everything that happened up to now.
A parallel cabinet with no proven efficacy. That's it. We've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at Telesur English, and you can also follow us on social media for all the latest news. So we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For Telesur English, I am Fray Gomez. Thank you for watching.